Welcome to Europe Explained, brought to you by the Council of Europe. This podcast series offers a unique window into what we're doing to create a fairer, more democratic Europe. Through conversations with experts and frontline workers, we bring you closer to the issues that matter, from fighting discrimination to upholding human rights, from defending democracy to building laws, systems and institutions that are just, fair and open to all.
Welcome to Europe Explained, and today we have a very special guest. It's Mathieu Mori, who's the Secretary General of the Congress of Local and Regional Authorities of Europe. It's a key pillar of democracy in the Council of Europe. Welcome. Welcome to Europe Explained today.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to talk a lot about local and regional democracy and why it's so important. But I'm curious at the very beginning to know a little bit about yourself and how did you follow this route? How did you end up coming to the Council of Europe as Secretary General?
Well, I would love to be able to tell you that local and regional authorities have been the big passion of my life since I started my career, and that it was a normal follow-up to that, but that's not really the case. I worked in the private sector previously in the UK and in France, doing a lot of consultancy. And then I moved to the association world, working for regions of Europe. I moved on to the European Union, where I was heading a program financing initiatives at local and regional level. And following that, the position became vacant here. I was a candidate and I was lucky enough, fortunate enough to win the competition. But even if local and regional authorities has not been from the very beginning of my career a passion and something I felt compelled to work on, it's grown on me from day one. I started working with local authorities for all the reasons I guess we will explore today.
So you came here with a lot of experience and now you've got that passion to really change things in the Council of Europe and for local and regional democracies. So what was it like beginning? What sort of challenges did you face? I know that the Congress has gone through reforms and that there's a whole new way of looking at things. Do you want to tell me a little bit about how it was?
Well, the main challenge when I started at the Council of Europe was the fact that a few months after I took office, there was the Summit of Heads of States and Governments in Reykjavik. And so not only did I have to get acquainted with the Council of Europe and the Congress, but I also had to prepare for this very important event, which transformed really the organization after it happened. So that was very challenging, but very, very inspiring because it was a crash course in understanding the Council of Europe. And I had to meet all the ambassadors, but not for courtesy visits, immediately to go into the details of what it is we could achieve and we hoped to achieve with the summit. And that was fascinating.
And one of the big things that you did achieve at the summit was for all the ministers at the Reykjavik summit to agree that local and regional democracy was up there on a par with any other sort of democracy throughout the whole of Europe. I know that you've got a new lease of life from that on the Congress. Can you tell me a little bit more about what proceeded from there?
The local and regional authorities are important in the life of the Council of Europe for quite some time, since the Congress is there. But we were particularly glad to see that not the Congress, but that the local aspect of things was present in every single part of the Reykjavik Final Declaration and its appendices, which showed the importance that the member states want to put on the local and regional level. So that was the first achievement, to get that on paper. And then from that, there was the administrative reform at the Council of Europe, which brought the Centre of Expertise on Good Governance to the Congress. Then the budget, of course, which reflected financially the political commitment that the member states took towards the Congress with a significant budget increase for the budget, which helps us now to deliver better on the statutory duties and a whole range of new activities we pushed for before the summit and we are now implementing.
So I've got a couple of questions that have always made me curious. The first one is, I think, quite easy for you to answer. That is, why is local and regional democracy so important?
It's very important because local and regional authorities implement public policies. And if they implement public policies, it's important also that they are involved in the making of public policies. And they implement public policies, for instance, on climate change. 65% approximately of mitigation measures to fight climate change are implemented at local level. So they are an incredibly important actor to fight climate change. And we could list a whole series of public policies where they play an important role. So they play an important role, and they are important because they implement things. I also think that they are terribly important because they give the wider public, citizens, confidence in politics, in public life. If you take any ranking, the Eurobarometer, the OECD studies on democracy, they all show that citizens have first and foremost confidence in local authorities, less so in national authorities. So if we manage to show citizens that indeed local authorities are close to their needs and deliver, then they will have more confidence in democracy altogether.
So putting it at a very simple level, if I'm living somewhere in Strasbourg or I'm living somewhere in Helsinki or York maybe, I, as a citizen, are the person who wants to send my children to school, who wants to have my dustbins collected, who wants to make sure the local park is neat and tidy, that there's enough money in the libraries. So in that sense, it's the closest I'm ever going to get to politics, and I've got a choice much more than, say, in a national or a European election even, where it's much more removed from the people. So in that sense, it's important.
Yes, there is this, but not only. There is this in the sense that, yes, you benefit directly from your local government, but it's also for you as a citizen probably the first step, the easiest step to get involved yourself, to run for elections. So that's the other aspect. Usually, all national European politicians, many of them anyway, have started at local level, and anyone can become a councillor or a mayor if they want to pursue. So this close bond between citizenship and running for election is also very important.
So it's a sort of a learning curve also for people to be able to get into politics, to change their lives for their communities. So my second question, which I've always thought about for a long time, is local and regional government is really important. Local and regional democracy is really important. But why should we have an organisation, the Congress, at European level? Surely there's a sort of big gap between what's happening in Europe and what's happening on the ground.
I think it's important to have the Congress within the Council of Europe for two main reasons. The first one is all the instruments, the standards that are developed by the Council of Europe will eventually have an impact at local level. So it's important from day one of the thinking of the new standard or instrument to have the point of view of local authorities, because eventually they will be impacted and they need to understand why this treaty is important and what is the best way for them to implement it. So we need to have this input from the start. So that's one reason why it's important. It's important also for the Council of Europe to have the Congress, because we help disseminate the understanding and the knowledge of all the standards of the Council of Europe in every city and village in Europe.
One of your key standards is the European Charter of Local Self-Government. I'd like to hear a little bit more about that, and perhaps if you could, a couple of examples of places where it has really changed the way that local and regional government act for the better.
Indeed, the Charter is an important instrument for local authorities and for the Council of Europe. It's one of the few standards that has been ratified by all member states of the Council of Europe. It's the only instrument in the world that puts the foundations, the basis of what it is to have a good functioning local democracy. The role of the Congress in that sense is important because we are responsible for making sure the instrument is implemented in all 46 member states, which we do through a regular monitoring every 5 years in all member states. We draw recommendations, and I can assure you, because this is a question I get very often, that those recommendations are being acted upon after they are being issued. We do check on a regular basis and every 5 years at the minimum what recommendations have been acted upon by the government, and after each monitoring, we see that our recommendations have been taken into account, that the legislation has changed or the practice has changed in a better way. Of course, in some countries, we don't wait 5 years. In some countries, which have a long list of recommendations, immediately afterwards, we sit down with the government and we have a discussion where we say, okay, well, clearly there is a need for quick improvement. Can we decide together on the 2-3 aspects, recommendations that you will want to work on immediately? And we draw a roadmap for over 1 or 2 years for change to happen more quickly. Now, in terms of how concretely it impacts people, it impacts people very importantly because the Charter is about giving to local authorities the powers, but also the financial means to actually operate. And if you look at all the ratings, those countries which implement the Charter well are usually the countries which are doing well financially, democratically, because mayors have the powers and the means to act.
And I suppose, if you're looking at it that way, it's the countries where it's more difficult that you perhaps need to give them more help and support. Is that correct?
Exactly, which is, we actually monitor every single country because we don't want to point at some countries, and also because even when we go to countries where we might think everything is well, we always find things that are not well. And because countries want us to come, all countries. But it's true that some countries call upon us for further help, which is why we are very active on the cooperation field. So we have a great number of cooperation projects which help us in some 20 countries at the moment implement the recommendations of our monitoring reports.
Can you give me a couple of examples of those cooperation projects? How do they work?
I can give you maybe not specific examples of countries, but I can share with you the fact that we help a good number of countries which want to change their legislation when it comes to powers of local authorities. We help them draft those new legislations. So that's one aspect. We also help municipalities understand better their role when it comes to human rights and what the Convention on Human Rights of the Council of Europe is about, because, of course, at local level, they are also in charge of making sure human rights are respected for everyone. In a more, let's say, practical, financial way, we have also helped recently municipalities in Armenia deal with the influx of refugees following the Karabakh situation. And of course, we help a lot Ukrainian municipalities to develop their own actions. And that's one of the other examples where I think the role of local authorities shows how important it is. It's the resilience of local authorities. We saw at the beginning of the war of aggression in Ukraine that local authorities, thanks to the decentralization that the Council of Europe helped together with Ukraine develop in 2014 and the years after, thanks to this decentralization that was in place at the time of the full-scale aggression, mayors were able, they had the powers and the means to immediately react to the consequence of the war. And President Zelensky himself talks about mayors of Ukraine as his second army, which says something about the importance of mayors.
And I think that's a really good example because, in such a time of war, then it's the people who need immediate help, they're going to get it from the local and possibly even the regional authorities. So it's a really good example of showing how important local and regional democracy is. So this might be an unfair question, seeing as you came in from the private sector and from associations. But looking back at the Congress over the many years that it's been working, can you see a sort of curve of change, of positivity coming about because of its work?
I can see that when you look at the last 10 years, we can see that all the recommendations we produce are taken on board. We can see that member states trust the Congress with more and more responsibilities. Now we have this new role of entertaining a political dialogue with local authorities for the execution of judgment, helping the court and the department for the execution of judgment to actually implement judgments of the court. Our role has also developed in terms of developing citizens' participation in local life. In 2009, we drafted an additional protocol on the right of citizens to participate in local life. And we have developed quite significantly projects on organizing citizens' assemblies in countries where decision-making at local level was complicated. I'm especially thinking about the Balkans, Bosnia and Herzegovina. We have implemented a lot of citizens' assembly at local level in Mostar, in Banja Luka, for instance, where the cities were blocked because of the various communities who could not, at political level, agree on a way forward. And with the help of those citizens' assembly, citizens which were very pragmatic showed the way to the political leaders, telling them this is what we want, so please act upon it, giving a very clear mandate to those politicians who could not agree on things to move forward. So this is also a very important aspect of our work.
There's a lot of talk these days about democracy being under threat, but talking to you now makes me feel quite optimistic that at a local level perhaps it is alive and thriving. But what do you see as the challenges for the future?
Well, when we see crises appearing, this is a challenge, because when there is a crisis, the immediate tendency of governments is to re-centralize power. And after such a wave of re-centralization, it's always difficult to give the power back. So we've seen that, for instance, with COVID. At the time of COVID, powers were re-centralized. And now we see in many countries that it's not decentralizing anymore. So that's a challenge for us at the moment. But I think you are right. At a moment where we talk always about a backsliding of democracy, I'm convinced that if we invest more in local democracy, that's a key tool to promote democracy altogether.
And leading on from there, what are your priorities for the future?
Well, our priorities, of course, Ukraine is a priority for everyone at the moment. We work a lot with cooperation projects, helping municipalities on the ground to develop their activities despite the current situation. We work politically with Ukraine to help the government and the national associations of local authorities in the design of the future laws on decentralization. We also work, as you know, and the listeners might know, there is a register of damage which has been developed by the Council of Europe to help citizens, public authorities list all the damages they have suffered because of the war. Well, of course, municipalities will have suffered a lot of damages themselves. So we are helping municipalities understand about this register and how to use it. And we also hope that via the municipalities, we will also reach the citizens, because it's very important that they know about the register and that they use the register. Another priority is the execution of judgments. And I'm very proud that the Congress is now also helping on that. To give you an example, very recently, a country was condemned because of decisions of a few mayors of not welcoming Roma and traveling people on their municipal grounds. Well, we are now in discussion with those mayors, with the National Association of Municipalities, in order to help them understand the importance of abiding by the judgment of the court. So this political dialogue is ongoing. Of course, democracy, we mentioned all the work we are doing on citizens' participation. This is a very important part of our work. And the Congress is well known within the Council of Europe for its work on youth. And this is a work that we really want to continue doing and to reinforce. We are very proud. Just a few days ago, we learned that for the 2025 Youth Delegate Program, which is a program meaning that youth take part in the work of the Congress, we've received a record high number of applications. So it's clearly a program that is thriving, and we really feel that we need to include youth in all aspects of our work so that they understand the importance of what it is we are trying to do at the Council of Europe.
So plenty of work to do to build local and regional democracy. Thank you very much for joining me. It's been excellent, interesting, and I wish you all the best for the future.
Thank you very much.
If you enjoyed this discussion and wish to explore more topics, be sure to check out the episodes of Europe Explained. You can learn more about the Council of Europe and its initiatives at our website, coe.int. And don't forget to follow us on social media for the latest updates and insights. You can find us on X, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram.